Hello everybody, welcome to R&B Reviews. I'm Rob and I'm continuing my April Fool's Comedy Month, and today I'm going to be doing a discussion video, but I will not be doing this video alone. Today I am joined by Dave, who was my guest reviewer on the channel for the first couple of years. He was a regular and we did several videos together, including our What to Watch with Your Popcorn segment. Hey Dave, how are things in good old Hawaii? How are you doing?
Good. How's it going with you?
Things are going pretty fine. You know, I'm really happy that you took the time out of your schedule to come and talk with us over the phone today.
I don't have much going on anyways. It's my day off.
Okay. All right, so today we're going to be doing a discussion video. One of the videos that I've talked about is the Three Stooges. They were a very popular comedy team during the 1930s up until the 1960s. They were known for their slapstick humor. They appeared in short subjects, which were 16, 18-minute films that were usually shown before feature films, and they focused a lot on slapstick and roughhouse comedy. And they were very popular when their films were re-released to television. Now, what many diehard Three Stooges fans know is that over the course of time, there were at least 4 different Third Stooges. Obviously, you had Moe, who was the leader, the boss. You had Larry, who was the middle man. And the Third Stooge was usually, for example, Curly, who was a man-child personality that often got frustrated with situations that the Stooges got into. There was Shemp, who was the street-wise, tough comedic character, but can turn cowardly at a moment. There was Joe Besser, who like Curly was an overgrown child, but he was a little bit more whinier. And we also had Curly Joe Dorita, who starred in their last group of feature films, and he was a little bit more bland, but still he could be kind of goofy. The reason why they got replaced is, Shemp was actually there first, and then he left, and Curly replaced him. Curly had a stroke in 1946 while filming Half-Wit's Holiday, and he passed away in 1952. Shemp died in the middle of their shooting schedule in 1955. Joe Besser stayed for only 2 years, and then Curly Joe was there, and then when the team broke up in 1970 because Larry had his stroke. So that's how all of them came and went. So today, Dave and I are going to discuss which one of these Third Stooges is our favorites and why, and we'll also touch up a little bit on the other Third Stooges. So Dave, why don't we start with you? Who is your favorite Third Stooge?
My favorite, Curly. He's the best. After him, I'd say Shemp. He's the only other one to me that was like the funniest. That was the closest thing to Curly. I mean, he wasn't. Nobody was ever Curly after Curly, but Shemp. I mean, he pretty much kept it going. It was still funny when they had Shemp because Curly Joe and Joe they just tried too hard, in my opinion. They weren't funny at all. They were just like whiny babies.
Okay, what was it about Curly that you liked? What made him funny to you?
I liked his childish behavior and everything, and when he'd do the funny voices and all that. Just basically his comical acting skills were really, really good.
For me, I would say my favorite Third Stooge is Curly, because I just think that, he came up with some great wild stuff. It seemed like on the fly. His character seemed to be very outgoing, and I really liked all the situations, like wherever he gets confused or gets frustrated, he always had sound effects or made faces, or he would grunt and everything. And also he was very good I thought he was a very good physical comedian, and I think he played off of Moe and Larry very well. When I was a kid, I really didn't care for Shemp because, I think I blended with Curly more because, he had a childlike personality and I was a kid, and I oftentimes got into situations where I would get frustrated, or I felt like Moe, like in the case of Moe being overbearing to Curly, sometimes teachers or even my parents sometimes could be a little bit overbearing with stuff that I didn't agree with. But I think as I got older, I appreciated Shemp much more. I mean, obviously Curly and Shemp were brothers to Moe. Moe and Curly and Shemp were or Howard, although it was Horowitz, but they Americanized it for the stage. So I think because they had worked with Larry off and on, and they knew each other's personality, and they knew their comic timing, I think that's why the chemistry with them was the best. Joe Besser, he wasn't really a member of the Stooges until obviously he joined them, and of course he had already had a successful solo career by this point. So I think that's maybe a part of the reason why he didn't quite gel. I mean, he also had a childlike behavior like Curly, but he wasn't really a roughhouse comedian that Curly and Shemp were. And again, with same thing with Curly Joe, he had a long career on his own before he joined up with the Stooges, and so because he hadn't worked with Moe and Larry before, the chemistry wasn't quite there like when Curly and Shemp were there.
Yeah, because even how I felt was like with the last two after Shemp, Curly Joe and Joe, it seemed like a whole different series, basically, aside from the Three Stooges. It felt like a whole different thing. I mean, it was still the Three Stooges, but it felt totally different, like it was a whole different show, even though Moe and Larry were still there.
Mm-hmm.
But it just seemed like Moe and Larry had to put up more effort to make it funny when Joe and Curly Joe were there, because they were just lagging behind. At least Shemp was still, contributing.
Yeah.
The way that Curly would.
Yeah, definitely. Joe didn't really like to get hit, so a lot of his early shorts, Moe and Larry are doing all the roughhousing, and Joe is off doing his own thing. And of course, whenever Moe or Larry are yelling at him or hitting him, he's like, "Not so loud, not so hot," and stuff.
Yeah, that was stupid. I mean, and the whole thing that makes that comedy duo funny is when they roughhouse and hit each other. That's what makes it so hilarious,
Yeah.
That's because when they do it with Curly or Shemp, it was hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think Curly Joe fit in much better than Joe Besser did. I mean, I think, he took the hits very well. Granted, he didn't really have an interesting persona like Curly, Shemp, or even Joe Besser had. That at least I think he fit in much better as a Stooge than Joe Besser did.
Yeah. Curly Joe was mostly the one that was in all the feature films, and really the feature films, they're actually kind of a little more serious than the regular shorts.
I think it was because with feature films you have to have more plot, while the short subjects you could have a whole line of gags lined up for 16 minutes and then that would be fine, because but with feature films you have to have more substance to it, and that's probably why they did that.
Because in the feature films you see an even more serious side of Moe in the feature films, especially.
Yeah.
Where it's like regular acting for him, where it's like not even like a comedy sometimes.
Yeah, but I think...
I mean, he was always serious no matter what, but,
Yeah, but I think he did a pretty good job. But I noticed that in some of the films like Three Stooges Meet Hercules and Around the World in the Days, they're often sidekicks to like a male leading actor, kind of, not exactly
right.
Stars. I think another thing a pro with Curly was he had the benefit of having most of his shorts were done when they were able to do film a lot more outside and have more over-the-top gags. I think by the time Shemp came in, they were starting to cut back on that because of budgetary reasons, and the films were more in studio. They were getting a little bit more dialogue oriented, which is fine because I think there's some very good shorts where the dialogue and the jokes are very good. But I think by the time Joe Besser came, a lot of his shorts are remakes of earlier films. It's not his fault, but oftentimes they had to pull footage from earlier films of like Moe and Larry and film new footage of Joe and try to put them in there.
Isn't it sometimes you see the backside of like one of the other Third Stooges sometimes even, but it's always when it gets to the front side, then it's always Curly Joe or Joe.
Yeah, like I know one film, there's the one Triple Cross where they're Moe and Larry pits Moe and Joe against each other. It's a remake of that. He Cooked His Goose, where Larry pitted Shemp against Moe. They did that quite a bit. Where they have it in the back of the back, and then you'd have to splice it in with the new footage.
Yeah, because the footage got like mixed in, and at certain points you actually see you're actually seeing Curly Curly in there with his back to the camera, so that you don't really notice it's him, but that's just because they didn't have all the technology to splice like they do nowadays.
Yeah, and I know when Joe did Oil's Well That Ends Well, it was a remake of Oily to Bed, Oily to Rise. There's the scene in the original where Curly rides up a chute of oil. I remember they used the footage of Curly, but they had to dub Joe's voice in there, and then they inserted close-ups of Joe.
But if you look hard enough, you can tell it's Curly in there.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it seems like we're definitely in agreement. We think Curly's the best, and then Shemp is followed by a second. So who do you prefer over, which Joe do you think's better, Curly Joe or Joe? Like I said, I think Curly Joe was much better for the Stooges than Joe Besser. Joe Besser, I think, could be funny, but I've seen him with Abbott and Costello, and he's funny with them, and I've seen him in other stuff. I think it's just, I don't think he gelled as a Stooge.
Yeah, Curly Joe, definitely. I mean, he's not funny, but funnier than Joe Besser.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and he's a little funny, but not as funny as Shemp or Curly.
Yeah, definitely. All right, well that wraps up the video then. Dave, thank you for calling in and talking to me about the Three Stooges, and I hope to have you on again.
Yeah, definitely, Rob. Thank you for having me on today.
No problem. All right, now for those of you that are watching this video that are Three Stooges fans, who is your favorite Third Stooge? Is it Curly? Is it Shemp? Or do you like Joe Besser and or Curly Joe? Go ahead and post them in the comment box below, and if you want to share some of your favorite moments or your favorite shorts from your favorite Third Stooge, go right ahead. And thank you very much for watching, and Dave, thanks again for calling in and talking to me today. It was a treat.
Oh, you're welcome, Rob.
All right, you're welcome.
Yep.
All right, well, thank you all for watching.